I'm Tim Lamont from the G1NBC News Desk with some tips on how to formulate your own local newscasts. Your number one priority is credibility. You build that by building relationships and establishing trust with your local newsmakers and public officials as well as your audience. At the local level, you do not want an adversarial relationship unless, of course, the official gets into trouble and becomes part of the news story. Then that cannot be helped. But building trust is of the utmost importance. You do not want to burn your sources or have the gotcha mentality that may pay off for one story, but result in drying up your steady local news source. And other officials will take note and tend to be uncooperative as well. So a little human relations will go a long way. Now, when you put your newscast together, you want to prioritize your stories by the importance to your community, those stories affecting the most people. Now, a local disaster, murder, or other huge crime will take precedence. Like the old adage says, if it bleeds, it leads. As you do these stories, they will become more obvious as lead stories and will virtually write itself. Don't clutter up stories with a lot of unnecessary information. In other words, keep it brief and to the point. On those days when prioritizing your news stories is more difficult or news is hard to find, you can take national or state stories and localize them. You can get comments on local impact from your state representatives or congressmen to get that local angle on larger stories. Then the next level of importance would be countywide news, then to cities, towns, and townships. Now, if you can end your newscast with what is called a kicker, which is a human interest or humorous story, please do so. On your newscast intros and outros, you will want to identify yourself and your station first. Then for our purposes, you should give a brief mention of newscast sponsors. Then end your newscast by mentioning that the newscast was brought to you by your sponsors by name, then your name and station ID. When going to a commercial break, you want to give a little tease about your next story coming up. When you get to the point where you are using video inserts or remote reports, please do so. These can make all the difference in your newscast. The video breaks up the newscast for viewers and increases interest by just adding another person, let alone the news value of the clip itself. When leading into the news clip, avoid redundancy. You want to mention a little about the story without doing the reporter's whole clip for him or her, then send it to the reporter. When you send it to them via the video clip, mention the reporter's name and location. If the reporter does this at the beginning of the report, avoid redundancy and edit that out and begin the video with the meat of the report. At the end, you can do the same edit and mention their name and location yourself, or just keep it in the video clip and say thanks, Tom or Sarah, for that report. You can also add one line of information about that story that hasn't been mentioned by your field reporter. These are just a few tips for getting going with your own local newscasts. For further help, you can direct your questions to news.g1nbc@gmail. From the news desk at G1NBC, I'm Tim Lamont.